The future of progressive radio. This is the Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live right here, Thursday, December 6th. I'm on Twitter all the time, at Dean Obadala, where I hope you follow me. Please follow during the show. I'm there. And that voice is the one and only Xorje Olivares, who you know from his own show on this very channel, Saturday from noon till whenever. It's like a telethon, never ends. Affirmative Reaction till 2 p.m. And producer on John Fugelsang's show, a writer for various publications. Xorje, my friend, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I will say, like a good Mexican, I do work a lot, so it is kind of like a telethon in that way.
I have the immigrant. It's not your parents immigrants or no?
No, they're no. So my dad's of everybody in my immediate family, my parents were both. Well, my dad was born in Idaho to migrant parents.
Wow.
His dad was an undocumented immigrant who came from Mexico. My grandmother was born in Oklahoma, randomly enough, and my mom's parents were born in my hometown in Texas.
So I have the immigrant work ethic from my dad. You have, so is the Mexican work ethic known just like the typical immigrant work ethic? It's like work, work, work.
Oh, yeah.
And if I'm not working, I feel something like I'm doing something wrong.
Yes. And even yesterday, my dad, who retired from teaching about 3 years ago, my dad outlined everything he was doing with his day. My dad does all these different projects. And it was after he outlined everything, I said, I get this from you, this idea that I just need to be going. But I think that's true because, so my grandparents were, on my dad's side, were migrant workers. Then they worked at what they called the Fabrica, which was this just kind of general interest store back home. And my grandmother it was called La Fabrica. It's like a kind of colloquial way to describe it.
Okay.
But like my grandmother was in charge of putting the pockets in pants, and my grandpa was the guy who was working in the stock room. And on my mom's side, my mom's dad owned a gas station, a Texaco gas station in my hometown. And my grandmother had a grocery store attached to their house for several years. So this whole entrepreneurial and / labor work is definitely in my genes and in my blood. So,
well, let's talk about something you're doing outside of work right now. Then we'll get into the issues of the day. But
yes, this
project about not just a toy campaign to help Refugee Services of Texas. Explain a little bit what this is, and we'll talk about the genesis of it.
So I very openly talk about the fact that I'm from the border. I'm from a small town called Eagle Pass. And border life is something that's very interesting. And people who are along the border kind of get it and have been exposed to not just the issue of immigration, but to undocumented people forever. And so I was doing my show, and obviously I've been spending a good amount of time talking about the family separation and the zero tolerance policy and how we have thousands of kids and adults who are in cages and detention facilities. Right. And in the course of all this, I just thought, God, I hate what's going on. And I hate that, you have someone like Kirstjen Nielsen at the Department of Homeland Security making these decisions and kind of carelessly doing so at the behest of Trump and all those who just don't care. So I was doing my show one day and I thought, I hope I can do something more than just the show, even though the show in and of itself does quite a bit.
Sure, you're bringing attention to the issue. And
so I thought, what can I do? And my focus at the time was on Tornillo, which is the tent city in Texas, close to El Paso. And I thought it would be wonderful to send toys to these kids who are there. And by all accounts, there's about 2,000 kids who are at Tornillo between the ages of 13 and 17. But the problem with that is it's under the leadership of the Department of Health and Human Services and other entities that make those kind of donations very difficult.
Oh, they do?
Yes. So instead, we decided to see, okay, how can we be more impactful with this project? And so we reached out to Refugee Services of Texas. It's a nonprofit organization that pretty much helps with resettling refugees, people who seek asylum, and those who get caught up in trafficking. And it is their job that once they get released from these facilities, that they help integrate them back into society. Now, Refugee Services of Texas has about 5 different locations, and the most recent location is in the Valley, in the Rio Grande Valley. And so pretty much like my hometown, it's on the border. It very much mirrors the life that I had. And so we came to this agreement that, it would be good if right now, we understand that the immigrants who get released from detention facilities, they just need regular food and housing and the ability to take a shower and the ability to have a place to lay their head where they're not surrounded by strangers who they've been all lumped together because why not? They're brown. And so what we're doing now is it's no longer a toy campaign, and it's not just a toy campaign. And what we're doing is we're raising funds with Refugee Services of Texas to help build that location in the valley. So that way, when immigrants come from that port, they'll have an opportunity to get the basic needs. And also part of that includes having the opportunity to work with case managers and having the kind of legal representation that sometimes they're not really afforded.
So you're giving them the basic needs, it's food.
So it's
clothing.
Helping essentially, yeah. So Refugee Services helps with those things. It helps.
So you're giving them money to Refugee Services that'll do this as well.
Yes.
In that package, do you give them a subscription to SiriusXM Radio?
Like we give them an Echo Dot. Here's your Amazon Dot.
It only gets SiriusXM Progress, a special SiriusXM, because you don't want to listen to Patreon. You're getting demonized on it. So they want to just be on this channel where they're welcomed and embraced
over and over and over again. It's just my and your show on loop, and so yeah, the money's going to go to Refugee Services of Texas, and we said if there's an opportunity to help those who specifically come out of Tornillo, that'd be wonderful too. But the overall goal is now to make sure that those who are leaving these facilities and those who kind of have no idea how to begin life again, that with the kind donations that we've received so far and that we hope to receive, that those will be used to do what we call needs and not wants.
Sure. And you're doing the ultimate progressive thing. You're doing activism to help people in need. And this is really important. And it's at GoFundMe, gofundme.com/toys for Tornillo, which is TOYS -for TORNILLO. Is it on your Twitter feed or computer? I tweeted it out.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
If you go to @DinoBidala and I mentioned that Xorje is coming on the show, I also have the link to that website if you want to make a donation. I made a donation today. I think it's important. Anything you can help people who are in need. This is what progressives are about. I always say we care about people we will never meet, and it doesn't matter. They're in need, and I want to do what little things I can do to help them. If it's talk about them on the radio, if it's write articles, or if I can contribute to something collectively, we do this together in a collective way. It makes a big difference.
And the thing is, since I haven't lived in my hometown in almost 12 years. I went to college 4 years. I've lived here for 8 years. So I don't remember. I've been so far removed from it that I forgot kind of the day-to-day and the human aspect of it all. Right. And so talking to Refugee Services of Texas and talking to the representatives they have there, I'm once again reminded, like, oh no, this is the gravity of the situation, and this is stuff that I didn't even think about. So here I was like, oh, let's buy toys, it'll be wonderful and amazing, and it's kind of like, no, they need the
more, right.
The shampoos and the shower loofahs and just an opportunity to have a meal.
And by doing this, you're also humanizing the refugees, who Donald Trump does the opposite, who truly want to dehumanize them. So people on his side don't have any compassion or care because in their view, they're an invading army that wants to take over America, not human beings. So that's really implicitly in what you're doing is that message as well, that these are people who, just like you and me, need basic necessities to survive.
And since I forgot to mention it, so if people go to heyxorje.com, which is my website, and it's XORJE, it pretty much makes it easy for you. There's a click here to donate button. You can go there. Just because, especially with the GoFundMe campaign, was initially labeled something else. That's why the URL is a little bit different.
Okay.
So if you just go to heyxorje.com, literally right there, click to donate, and it'll redirect you to our GoFundMe page, which so far we're very grateful for the donations we've received.
Great.
And we've been very open in saying that if you cannot contribute at this point, we understand, but just share it as much as you can with those you know who clearly this holiday season, I mean, a lot of people are going to be with their families. Some of the people that we're hopefully going to be working with might not be with their families. So just keep that in mind.
When you say tornillo, you say, is it a Spanish word?
Tornillo? Yeah. Tornillo means screw. Which, interestingly enough, it's like...
Interesting town name. How did that happen?
I have no idea. But
imagine. But tornillo, so can you say my hometown, Paramus, with it to make it more exotic? How would you say?
Paramus?
It's over. You're making it more exotic. It's actually a Native American word. It means wild turkey.
Interesting.
Paramus. Because in
okay.
North Jersey, where I'm from, that I guess whatever original people went there, they took the land from the Native Americans and then named the land they took after words that are from their Native American language, like Hohokus and Mawa in New Jersey, like the Mahwa. Or whatever.
Yeah.
And then Paramus is Paramus, which is really wild turkey.
Well, I should have. This is the son of a Spanish teacher speaking. Like I should have asked if there's an accent mark, because if the way the natural emphasis on the word Paramus would be on the second A, so it would be paramos.
Right, paramos. Yeah.
But if there's an accent on the first A, then it would be paramos.
It sounds exotic. When I say with an Arabic accent, I go, Paramus. No, it doesn't. I don't know how I want to go to Paramus, my friend. How do you get me Paramus? So, we talked on election night. You were in Texas, right?
I was in Texas, yeah.
And covering Beto O'Rourke. He didn't win there, but it seems like he may have lost that battle and on to a bigger war. What was it like after the election with regards to Beto?
So Beto, right? So the fun part about being there was, again, as I talk about the similarities between Eagle Pass, where I'm from, and the border, the Rio Grande Valley, where a lot of these resources that we're gathering will go towards, El Paso is kind of the same thing. It's on the border. It has this Tex-Mex feel to it, and it just represents home to me. So being able to talk to people who sound like me and look like me and talk about just how enthusiastic they were to vote for Beto was wonderful. And I think it was at a baseball stadium where he had his thank you event. That's how he labeled it. And you could tell everybody was hyped up. They wanted to see him, and the line just went blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks.
This was a thank you event that night or after?
It was that night.
Okay.
So I think instead of calling it like a victory party or just an event.
Because he knew the chances are long that he could win just because it's Texas, not because he's a great candidate. He's a good candidate.
But it was wonderful hearing from everybody there that said, he's a hometown guy. He went to my high school. We went to the local restaurant together. He didn't seem like this weird figure who was hovering above everybody. He was just Beto. And I
aspire to be the weird figure hovering above everybody. I like to be inaccessible and detached and aloof to everyone, but it can't work that way because I'm too needy, so it doesn't work that way.
But I think that was the genius of his campaign by making it about, because even Obama, right? Obama wasn't Barack. That's not what the campaign was.
Right. Absolutely.
Here was Beto. And that informality and that...
I say Beto, but it's Beto.
It's Beto.
Beto. Mm-hmm. I'm an idiot when it comes to the actual emphasis on which syllable in a word. I screw it up a lot. Beto. Okay.
Yeah, because if for Spanish words, if the end of the word ends with either N or S or a vowel, then the natural emphasis goes on the second to the last syllable.
I don't know anything you said to me.
So, okay.
You described a math problem to me.
So, like the word Beto, right? Beto ends in a vowel. So the emphasis goes on the second to the last syllable. So that means it's Beto, not Beto.
So it's Beto.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go with Beto.
Yeah,
in my head, I think of the first emphasis on the first syllable.
Yes.
So, but now Beto might be running, and in fact,
which I totally think he needs to do.
I'm going to ask you, what do you think in Texas? You think they would be as excited as they were about his Senate race to share him with the nation?
I really do think so. I think the fact that he made it such a personal campaign, he always, if you notice, every single time he did a campaign stop, always referenced his wife by name, always mentioned his kids by name, always tried to make it seem like we were a part of his family too.
Right.
And that's why, I mean, in addition to the viral videos that he was a part of, that's what kind of got everybody in the nation to fall in love with him. And for me, and I think there's a CNN opinion article about this too, you got to strike when the iron's hot. And right now, Beto's hot. And
if this is the time to be honest.
This is the time to do
it. If he
doesn't
run now, what do you wait for? Governor in a few years of Texas again and hope for the best?
Which may, but the way, especially during the Trump administration, our attention span is over within a day. Like tomorrow, I'm going to forget what we talked about. But nobody is going to be as... Like, even the fact that he met with Obama and the fact that he's been meeting with Obama's people and a lot of people in his campaign have been cross-pollinating.
Obama said nice things to David Axelrod on a podcast over the weekend about that. He doesn't seem, it was an odd comment. He goes, he doesn't seem poll tested. It seems like he's saying what he actually believes. And I'm like, that should be the way it always works.
Yeah.
But for him to say it that way, it says so much about other people who've run for office who seem like they're speaking in a reading off a teleprompter and doing things that have been focus grouped and poll tested, and they said this is acceptable and don't say this. And Beto did not care about that.
Yeah. And he even said that he reminds him of himself.
Did he say that?
Obama said that he reminded me a little bit of himself. And they have the same manner of speaking. Like the way in which they pause, the way in which they address the crowd, it's very much the same. So I think if he doesn't run now, then I'm not sure how it's going to work out, because even the night he lost, so I leave the Beto event, everybody's sad, everybody's crying, and everyone's having a moment. And I look at my Twitter, and that night alone, he was the #1 trending topic with 1.5 million tweets. Wow. Ted Cruz had about half that, and that's only because everybody was saying, Texas, what the hell are y'all doing?
Right.
And so that amount of attention, him being on Colbert, him being on Ellen, him being on all these different national platforms, people are talking about him now. And the fact that he got 48.5% of the vote in Texas and the margin was very thin, it's showing that he's gotten people to come out. Even when I went home for Thanksgiving, seeing all the Beto signs back home, that was encouraging. Seeing people just talk about Beto all the time, that's encouraging.
It's going to be interesting. People have called. I've tried not to get into who do you want for president yet. More, what are the characteristics you want of the candidate? But people will still say the names and here and there. And his name comes up. You know, a lot of people, I don't want to get into it now. People start calling and tell me who they want. And we're going to have so many of those conversations in the new year. I'm just waiting because right now we're having people saying they're not running. Just to Winnie the field. Deval Patrick and Michael Avenatti, who was not a top tier candidate. In any event, I thought he was going to run for a little while, but then the domestic abuse issue came up and you know, I don't know if it would have been in anyone's best interest, frankly, if he ran at that point. But so it'll be interesting. As soon as we get past this holiday, Kamala Harris has said she's going to decide. I'm sure Elizabeth Warren, and the list will go on. We're going to have, we might have 20, might have 25. So we'll see.
We might have a lot.
Let's take a break. Behind you, by the way, Fox News is talking about you, mass migration's effect on America.
Damn it.
It's just nonstop.
They cut on to
when
me.
you watch Fox, I mean, it really is with Tucker Carlson. It is, because I watch it every night because it's here during the commercials.
I don't even know how you do it.
It really is, and I call him Tucker Klansman for a reason, because it really is white nationalist, white supremacist television come to life. Hannity is not like this. I mean, it really is a stark contrast. Tucker, every night, Hannity's more about the world's against us, and Trump is the greatest thing ever, and they don't appreciate him. But the white national, white supremacy stuff is Tucker and then Laura Ingraham, some of it. They've made that choice to do that. So
the sad part is Tucker's on at the right time for people who, you know, at this point, this generation, and for the past, I would say maybe the past couple, people watch TV while they eat dinner. And he's on the perfect time at dinner where you can watch with your family.
And still have time for a cross burning afterwards, right? You can do both. A dinner and cross burning combo is a kind of thing like that, right?
But now that so many people in eating with somebody is a very intimate thing, and when you absorb all this information while you're eating, I don't know. I think it's a strategic move on Fox's part to put him with.
Make you dumber while getting calories.
Yeah.
So we're going to come back because the future is female. Now, we're not going to talk about that. But we'll talk about tomorrow night on what just happened. We're going to talk about that.
Oh, yeah, nice.
But I want to talk about Donald Trump, the man who's breaking news today, New York Times story about Donald Trump hiring at least several undocumented immigrants to work right over here in New Jersey at his Bedminster Country Club, including one woman who worked for him and had some really interesting comments to make about Trump. And if you haven't heard it, broke several hours ago. We'll talk about it when we come back with more of our friend Xorje Olivares right here on the Dean Obeidallah Show.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
Voting is the most important civil right of our era because the right to vote preserves all other rights. It's not the Second Amendment. It's not guns. It's voting.
SiriusXM Progress. new perspectives, important voices, influential ideas. This is the Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show, live here Thursday, December 6th. In studio, our friend Xorje Olivares, his own show on Affirmative Reaction right here on Saturdays at noon. Also from John Fugelsang's show, writes for various publications. And this was interesting today. The New York Times reported Donald Trump hired at least several undocumented immigrants to work as housekeepers at the Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster. One woman specifically was interviewed, Victorina Morales, who clearly was undocumented when they were hired. And she said in the article they'd given some fraudulent documents. I'm not sure how much checking they did, or they don't even care.
It was one of those like wink, wink, here, talk to this
That's
person.
That's what it seems like.
Fine.
And there were a few comments. I want to read this first one, though. She said, "We are tired of the abuse, the insults, the way he talks about us when he knows that we are here helping him make money." She added, "We sweat it out to attend to his every need and have to put up with his humiliation." This is stunning words from a woman who just told the New York Times, who I don't know if I think she still works there. What do you make first of Donald Trump hiring undocumented? It's not like he personally. I'm just being fair here as a lawyer.
The Trump organization.
Not like Trump, right? It's not
yes.
He sat down and interviewed these people. They're being hired, the Trump organization. And there's Trump every day, though, rallying against undocumented immigrants, taking American jobs. And he is giving that to people at his country club.
Donald Trump is one to make money. He's one to profit off of everything. He's one to make sure that he can have all the money in the world. And it only makes sense that somebody who wants to do that will cut corners and will try to pay low wages. I think the woman cited that she only makes $13 an hour or something like that. And so it's not rocket science for people to know that undocumented people will take labor wherever they can find it and will do it at whatever cost, meaning, if you pay them pennies on the dollar, okay, they'll do it. Right. And Trump, who's been in the business for decades and decades and decades, knows that. And it really is no surprise that this is something that's been going on for quite some time within this particular location. I think the thing that I don't even know if his supporters will say something about this. I'm sure they'll put all the blame on her and they'll put all the blame on the others who are working there.
And the system's broken. If the Democrats just voted for something,
yes,
it'll be fine. That's my Trump impression, by the way. So,
but the idea that he is completely oblivious to this, I find that incredibly hard to believe.
Well, so did Miss Morales, who told the New York Times she's certain that her employers, maybe even Trump, knew of her unlawful status, saying, quote, "I asked myself, is it possible this senor thinks we have papers? He knows we don't speak English," adding, "Why wouldn't he figure it out?" So you mentioned to me in the break that she used the word senor here. What do you think that was about?
Well, it's the only word that's included that's Spanish within the whole article. I appreciate that the New York Times has an option at the top that says leer en español, so read in Spanish, right. Which I thought, okay, this is great. But it's the only word, and it's a very significant word because it's a word that people use about their bosses and use to identify an authoritative figure. And Donald Trump, for the purpose of this story, is that to this woman. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting that that's the one word they would choose to translate, because they said in the article that they conducted hours-long interview with this woman and another, Ms. Diaz.
Right.
And it was conducted in Spanish. And so for everything to be in English, but this one word, it's definitely a calculated move on the Times part.
There was something else that sort of jumped out at me because I was watching a segment on the emoluments clause and Trump's self-profiting, and how even here with this woman who's a housekeeper, he intermingles the government with his business. And I don't think the New York Times made a big deal about this. They just reported this, but they wrote that Miss Morales, because of the outstanding support she's provided to during Mr. Trump's visits, Mr. Morales in July was given a certificate from the White House Communications Agency inscribed with her name. So the White House Communications Agency department gave her an award for taking care of Trump at his private country club. Yeah. They're one and the same to Trump. He views the government as his companies and vice versa, because why would you not give her a Trump award, like Trump Employee of the Month? Instead, they give her a White House Communications Award.
Yep.
What communication that she was doing for the White House? She couldn't even speak to him.
True.
And there's Trump nodding. He probably smiles all the time, and these people thinks he's the nice. Look how nice I am to her. She doesn't speak English, so I don't care. And this is Donald Trump. But to go to something else, and Donald Trump in 1998 settled a class action lawsuit that he stiffed a union pension fund and that he hired undocumented Polish laborers. This is all proven to demolish a department store here in New York where he built Trump Tower. He had to pay $1.4 million. And he was making these undocumented Polish workers who were not in the union work, quote, 12-hour shifts with inadequate safety equipment at subpar wages that their contractors paid sporadically, if at all. This is Trump, whose history is anything for profits.
Which is incredibly calculated on his part because think about it. Let's say, hypothetical situation. I am an undocumented worker here in this country. And again, hypothetical situation. Right. Just want to make that clear.
I have to report you to Fox News.
Right? And they're across the street.
Exactly.
So, hypothetical situation is that I'm an undocumented worker and I work for the Trump organization. And I find out that because of XYZ, they've decided to not pay me either this paycheck or that paycheck or cut down my fee or whatever wage that I'm making. And I can't really say anything about it because if I say something about it, then that might raise questions about my documentation. That might raise questions about my social security card. That might raise questions about the legality in which I can work here. And if doing that, sets off all the alarms, and those alarms will then be sent to, especially if there's an E-Verify program to see whether or not I even have the right to be in this country, then that starts with ICE and deportation processes. So this idea that he is actively stiffing people and making sure that they're not paid for the work that they do, he knows that there's all these different scared, undocumented individuals who are going to take it and do so because the alternative is for them to go back to their native land. And that native land, that's pretty much... there's poverty everywhere, and that's the reason why most of them have left. It's just this horrible, vicious cycle that Trump has been a part of for all these years that he doesn't even know it anymore.
Or doesn't care.
Or doesn't care.
And this is the same Donald Trump who literally rails against immigrants taking American jobs, who this year, not years ago, this year again, Mar-a-Lago, the White House South, whatever you call it, filed a request with the Department of Labor to obtain 61 visas for foreign workers. These are H-2B visas. And they asked for 40 H-2B visas for servers and another 21 for cooks. And are you telling me in Florida you couldn't find Americans who would do it? But what they couldn't find were those who would do it for the wages that the people they could import for a job who were just happy to be there, who wouldn't ever quit.
Yeah.
They're almost like indentured servants, but they get paid, of course, so they're not really. But he brought them in just to make more money at Mar-a-Lago, even as president. And
in that article, there's a definition as to who can benefit from an H-2B visa, right? Or the reason why those can be issued. And it said, if you cannot find an American who is able or willing to do the work. And so the willing part stuck out to me in that, it's specific to people who would be willing to, degrade themselves and work for, like I said, pennies on a dollar, because otherwise, then they're not going to get that job. But undocumented people of color, regardless of their immigration status, will take those jobs because they understand that if it's a matter of putting food on the table or not, you better put food on the table. And if that means taking the $7 an hour job or taking an even lower amount of dollars for a job, you do it. Because if you did all you could, and this is speaking within the context of undocumented immigrants, if you did all you could to leave your country and you went through whatever strife in order to do so, you're going to hold on to that job for dear life, because if it means surviving or not surviving, you're going to survive.
And it's also interesting when you get to bottom line stuff here. I mean, the bottom line of money for Trump with these H-2B visas, it actually talks about in the application what they're going to be paid, around $13, $12. Same thing with housekeeping. So Donald Trump's objection to a $15 national minimum wage is not just ideological. It might not even be ideological. It's literally his bottom line.
Yeah.
Because all these employees that he's paying less than a $15 minimum wage becomes a national standard, and he has to give raises to all of them. And that's what makes it, this idea that a businessman is a good idea for a president was the worst thing ever. I mean, we knew this. And Trump, lack of success really makes it hard for the next bigoted, racist, fake businessman to get elected in office. But it's made it more and more problematic. And we just had Seth Abrams on before you talking about Russia and collusion. And it's so much of Trump's business dealings to Russia began in 1987. So it's not like new. And we should have never had someone. I don't even know why. I know why the Republicans, they love the bigotry and the bullshit, but it is so complex for our nation and so potential fraught for violations and crimes and corruption, open corruption. Just the reporting yesterday that Saudi lobbyists took out like 500 rooms in Trump International Hotel in D.C., clearly to lobby Trump. I mean, they were lobbyists for Saudi, but they're shrewd enough they're in America, and we're going to put all these ex-vets there in the D.C. hotel of Trump, and he'll know about it because it's so many like luxury suites, and they're going to D.C. to actually lobby on behalf of a bill that the Saudi government wanted to stop. Everything is for sale. And
think about it. Like, if you are an undocumented worker in this country, are you going to fight for a raise? Probably not.
No.
You're just happy that you got the paycheck. And even if that paycheck is as abysmal as it is, you take it. Because, like I said, the alternative is not something you even want to think about. And so employers realize that. Employers realize that they'll never have to deal with negotiations. They'll never have to deal with somebody coming in and saying, well, I don't think this is fair.
Right.
Because even though they know it's not fair, they do it because...
Or even worse, though, they won't report being sexually assaulted or robbed. And that's going into the shadows. I mean, we covered it on the show maybe a year ago where an undocumented immigrant called the police on someone and the police come and end up arresting him.
Yeah.
And what's that message? I'm sure that goes through the communities out there. Don't call the police, because they call the police. You know, they might start investigating you. So undocumented immigrants become prey for people who want to rape them, steal from them, beat them up, assault them.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem with our immigration system not being fixed. Like that needs to be fixed. We need to deal with, it could be 11 million undocumented immigrants, whatever, 12 million. They should have the sanctity of knowing they're in this country. We have to work it out. You know, I'm all for DACA kids all being citizens. I'm for their parents. I'm really for anyone who's here already, who's not committing a crime, who's contributing to the country, having the opportunity over a period of time to become a citizen of this country. I don't believe in open borders, but I believe if you're here now and you're contributing,
how are you doing me harm? You're not.
Yeah, and maybe you make it a 4 or 5 year process. I get it, because you want people to incentivize doing the right thing and going through the process. So maybe you make it longer, 6 or 7 years, and then finally become a citizen. But there's no need. It's punitive garbage.
Yeah. Even right now, like this idea that, because we're talking about fear of the police and being caught and being sent back, one of the most disturbing aspects of the family separation policy, and besides the fact that there's kids in cages, is let's say you are the parent to, you're an undocumented person, you're a parent, and they separate you and your child, and you're not in a facility, but your child is. And let's say you try to reclaim your child. If you try to reclaim your child, then the alarms go off and saying, you're undocumented.
Right.
So then the process of deportation and detaining you all start all over again. And so any attempt to save these kids is fraught, because now you yourself are putting yourself in danger of never seeing them again. So it's just this horrible thing that continues to go on and on and on, with nobody really focusing on how this is incredibly traumatic and damaging in ways that we're never going to realize.
Well, my friend, let's take a quick break. I want to come back to talk about politics and the Hispanic community. You're here tonight on all things Hispanic in a way. Yeah. But no, there's a big article in Politico titled Democrats Have a Hispanic Problem. And we'll talk about that, because the title's slightly misleading. It's really a Florida
It was
Latino
a very Florida-centric
Right,
problem.
because all of a sudden I'm like, this is terrible. Then I realize, oh, this is all Florida. But it's relevant, though, going to 2020 for candidates. Like, you cannot take the Latino community for granted, just like you should not take the African-American community for granted. I've had this conversation on my show, or the Muslim vote, that you should not just court them. You have to earn their vote, or you should be repaying them for all the support they've given you historically for various communities. So we're going to come back and address that and more right here with our friend Xorje Olivares right here on the Dean Obidala Show. Progressive values are the best of American values, and we need to keep fighting for them to save our country.
Don't go anywhere. This is the Dean Obidala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127. Welcome to the Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live right here, Thursday, December 6th.
Already?
It is. Our friend, tomorrow night, I know Raul Reyes will be here. I have another Latino friend. Can you believe that? Raul will be here.
More than just me.
And then we do What Just Happened in the third hour. But tomorrow might be, Raul's also a lawyer, and there might be two filings in Robert Mueller's cases, two sentencing memos, one for Michael Cohen and one for Manafort. They're expected tomorrow. But sometimes they can come anytime, even like 11:50 p.m. at night. They do an e-filing.
Tell Mueller, as somebody who works in the media, bro, you do not release these things on Friday afternoon or Friday evening because nobody pays attention to them.
And when they did the other one for Michael Flynn a few nights ago, they dropped it at 8:40 p.m.
Yeah.
But I had Danny Cevallos on, another Latino guy. Look at the Latinos in my life. He was here, MSNBC lawyer. So when it broke, we went right to it. But they can file anytime they want, and the deadline is tomorrow for both, for Manafort and Cohen. So tomorrow night, folks, we will be addressing both of those, I'm sure.
God, Dean, I hate that I'm the only Latino in your life who's not a lawyer.
Well, we're going to send you to law school at night. And in a few years, you'll be a lawyer as well.
That works.
So let's talk about, I want to touch on this quickly, but I want to get to the Trump administration trying to get the Supreme Court to immediately take up the transgender ban. Because I think it got almost no press coverage because it was reported the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And that affects people's lives. But so we'll touch on this quickly because we have one more break. So we'll do this for a couple minutes. According to this article, Democrats have a Hispanic problem. But it was very specific to Florida. And nationally, folks, in the House race, Latinos voted for Democrats 69% to 29% supporting Republicans, which is actually pretty close to the exit polls for Donald Trump election. That almost, according to Pew right here, I'm looking at it right now, that 66% voted for Clinton of Latinos and 28% for Trump. But in Florida, the Latino vote was almost 50-50. It was like 54% to 44% Democrats, Republicans. And that was sort of the swing. If they had matched the national average, it would have easily been Andrew Gillum would have won, and Rick Scott would have lost for Senate, and it would have been a re-election of Bill Nelson. So what goes on in Florida? Because nationally, it's going pretty good here.
Yeah.
Florida, what's different?
I think specifically when people on a national level want to talk about the Latino vote, they always try to make it seem like we're this monolith. And so they make sure to say that the Mexican-American experience is the same as the Puerto Rican experience, the same as the Cuban-American experience, is the same as anybody from Central America. And it's not. Right. And historically, we know that the older generation of Cuban-Americans who have been residing in Florida for several decades skew Republican and conservative, and they always have. And so I think when you think about the numbers of people in my generation and in the generation before me, even though they try to be a little more liberal and are more on the left side, it's also hard to engage them because of there have been several conversations about making sure that the youth go out to vote. But that's something that also needs to be taken consideration when we're talking about the Latino vote. I think Pew Research came out with this number that said the median age for the majority of Latinos who live in this country is 19.
Wow, that's a very young community. It's a remarkably young community.
But it's ready for them to vote.
Sure.
And so it's a matter of making sure that that group of people really do go out to vote. And something that I've had conversations with friends about, it's like, well, especially the Beto, right? Beto in Texas. Everybody knew about Beto, but nobody wanted to go vote because they felt they were going to make an uninformed decision about who's running for local city council, who's running for the down ticket races. And so they just felt like their vote would be wasted, even though it would be used for someone like Beto, that it'd be wasted on the other candidates because they didn't know if they were voting for the quote unquote right person. So I think that's always something to remember. But with regards to the Latino vote, I think the two things, and one of the things that was mentioned in this article that makes a lot of sense, is making sure you don't have a late start. And I think the problem with a lot of politicians, especially from the Democratic Party, because you think that it's a for sure thing that Latinos will vote for you, that queer people will vote for you, that African Americans will vote for you, that you wait to the end for the Hail Mary pass and, hey, help me get to the finish line. And it's not, that's not how it works.
Sure.
And so a lot of people, especially within this past campaign, a lot of Latinos thought, well, where am I included in this conversation? The other big mistake that I think a lot of people do is equate Latino with Spanish. And even though, yes, there are a lot of Spanish monolingual speakers who are Latino identifying and others who speak Spanish within some sort of manner, it doesn't mean the exact same thing. So I think a lot of candidates and a lot of politicians think, oh, I don't have a Spanish speaking this, I don't have Spanish ads, I don't have this. Because they don't have that, they're fearful of what that means for engaging the Latino voters, instead of realizing that Latinos care about healthcare. Latinos care about, like me, student debt. They care about jobs. And even though right now immigration is one of those big ticket items that everybody's focused on, it's not the only thing Latinos care about. And so when politicians, especially Democrats, think that the way to appeal to Latinos is automatically go to a Spanish ad or have somebody who speaks Spanish be the one to make the appeal, that's not always the right thing to do. Because even though, yes, I speak some level of Spanish, that is not fully tied to my Latino identity. So if you as a Democrat release an ad for Latinos and it's all in Spanish, what does that do for me? It doesn't necessarily do the thing that you are hoping it does. And so relying on Spanish to be the only way to communicate with Latinos, I think is not helpful.
That's interesting. It's also, every community is different, and there's certain things maybe in common, but different parts of your community based on socioeconomic status, based on age, they're going to have different concerns, at least in a priority of your concerns. Like if you say, is immigration important? They might say, sure, but it's the priority of where that concern is in their own personal hierarchy. What motivates me to vote is different than am I concerned. Dean cares about these 5 issues. Which one really moves me? Is that all you really need? Because that's the one that's going to make me go out and vote.
Yeah.
So...
because I think people forget about healthcare specifically for Latinos. Latinos are more likely to develop diabetes, have renal failure.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, and just in my hometown alone, just to speak anecdotally, there are 2 different dialysis centers, and I'm up from a town of 25,000 people. 2 dialysis centers that work 6 days a week that rotate people in and out. That's just common. And something else that's healthcare related, that's also queer related, is that 1 in 4 Latino gay and bisexual men are more than likely going to contract HIV in their lifetime. So Latinos care about things that aren't immigration related.
Sure.
And I don't know if Democrats, because they think like, here, we'll toss this out to you and it's immigration and that means we're thinking of you. Well, not necessarily. And I think that's where they falter a bit.
For the Muslim community, I can tell you where it comes up, where politicians will talk to us and say, and I was even at an event with Tim Kaine in 2016 when he spoke to a whole Muslim group. We had raised enough money where he came to this event. And he talked to us about healthcare and stuff. That was good. And then he got to Muslim community things. And he's like, and I want you to know that, I know that very few Muslims are terrorists, that you're working with us and that kind of stuff. And it was nice, but we're not defined by that issue. That's an issue that the right is trying to raise. Like, it matters to our community. It matters to our community in that people are being killed in the name of our faith at the time. It was happening more frequently. And that people from our community are being seduced by lies to go join ISIS and Al-Qaeda. But it's not the top issue for us because it's a small little concern, and the bigger concerns that you're an American Muslim. Yeah. You're an American. You got all the same American concerns.
Yeah, raising your hand like, hi, can we talk about the $15 wage, please?
Right, talking about defining us by national security issues is not going to sway us, and they didn't get that. Talking about Palestine might move some people, but they generally won't talk about that. All right, we have one more break. All right, we're going to take one more break. We went too long on that one because I wanted to talk about the Supreme Court. Well, I'll take a quick break and we'll come back 2 minutes and talk about Trump trying to discriminate against transgender Americans because it makes Mike Pence and the Christian Shariaists happy. We'll be right back after this.
Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127. Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live right here, our friend Xorje Olivares in studio. Quick thing, Xorje, I wish we had more time, and I should have spaced this out better. But the day after Thanksgiving, the Trump administration quietly asked for the Supreme Court to immediately take up their transgender military ban that he wants. A lower court said it was unconstitutional, but instead of letting it go in the normal course, he demands a priority. And to me, this was more a priority of red meat to the Christian right-wing conservatives who like them, because the average American is not no one's thinking this is a priority for our military, but Trump for red meat for his base. So what's your reaction when you hear Trump is making this a priority?
Well, we're forgetting, to the point about how people are forgetting the story or didn't even see the story. A lot of people are forgetting the fact that not too long ago, there was this memo that said that, hey, we shouldn't even consider trans people citizens, that we shouldn't even identify them as how they want to be identified, that for the purposes of governmental just agencies, what they would do is, if you were born a male, then I'm sorry, you're a male for the rest of your life. And if you're female, same thing. And so randomly enough, the Trump administration has decided, even though trans people were sitting down, minding their own business, he said, all right, first, you know what? We're not going to let you serve in the military. Oh, JK, if you're a student, we're just going to take away all the protections you had with Obama. And now, as a trans military person, you're not fit to serve. And it makes no sense other than to just make sure that the people that hate trans people are excited.
I mean, do you view this administration as the most anti-trans administration of the, because the other generations didn't talk about it, I guess, much.
I think because they're actively going against things, because with Obama we had so many successes and so many wins. The fact that he's actively going back and overturning that shows that there's a disdain for community that wasn't apparent before.
Xorje, thank you very much for coming in and spending the hour. And listen to Jorge's show every Saturday noon right here on this very channel, and contribute to his Not Just a Toy campaign. I tweet about it at Dean Obadala. Xorje, thanks for being here.
Thanks,
Check him out on Twitter. I'll be back tomorrow night. Have a great night, everyone.